Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on Health and Wellness. What a pleasure, what a delight to introduce you to my guest, Dr. Nelson Atatua, a public health physician trained in the University of Catanova in Colombia, also went to West Kentucky University for his master's in public health, did a doctorate degree in public health at the Texas A&M, and went abroad to work for the World Health Organization in Barbados. He's done also a doctoral thesis program in Philadelphia and currently teaches in the School of Public Health in Jackson State University in Mississippi, Jackson. We are so privileged to have such a titan in the world of public health with us this week. You don't want to miss it. He's going to share his story of being a cancer survivor, a polio survivor, suffered from a divorce, reconstructing his life and getting back on track, and how he hopes to end his life on this journey. It's an amazing story you don't want to miss. Look forward to seeing you. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on Health and Wellness. What a pleasure, what a delight. Don't touch that dial. We have a special guest all the way from Bogota, Colombia, Dr. Nelson. I said Atatua, but it could be
Atatua.
Atatua, I'm
Yes.
sorry. And he's a colleague, he's a friend, and he's a patriot. He's been all over the world. He trained at some of the best schools in the world. Medical school in Colombia, came here, did some postgraduate training at the University of Western Kentucky, A&M, Texas, and then he's teaching currently at Jackson State University, worked for the WHO and in several capacities across the world. And I brought him on the show today to highlight the global face of COVID-19 and how you can make a difference, and how his personality, his character, his background has influenced him up to today. And yesterday we just got scratching the surface of his amazing life as a polio survivor, as a cancer survivor, and as a COVID survivor.
Well, COVID survivor in the sense that we are survivors of this pandemic, right? I was lucky to be, on the part of knowing what to do, how to prevent, and then we got the vaccines. So I had the 2 shots
I
of
got mine
Pfizer,
in December, right? Yeah.
and I recently got the booster.
Oh, you did?
Yes, for people like me, we have this option of getting the booster, and I just did,
Right.
because you never know. It's no precaution is good enough.
Right.
Especially in this environment that we are right now, where some people believe that it's a hoax.
Yeah.
And well, we have people dying for thousands, hundreds of thousands in the U.S. and millions
across
in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, we hadn't had this pandemic like in a century. So
So I told people, I said, without the vaccine, what would we do? I mean, people say, oh, I don't believe in the vaccine. Okay, so what are you proposing?
okay, I mean,
what would you propose in place of the vaccine?
And that is an interesting conversation, because some people, I mean, this is kind of a politicized conversation. That's the unfortunate side of it. And I don't look at things from an ideological perspective. I look at things from the rational, logical perspective. And the information that we have is, well, in the first place, COVID-19, until proven otherwise, which I doubt it will be, it was a natural mutation, because the people just got to know about coronavirus now. But we know about coronavirus for 60 years.
Yes, we've always.
I mean, in the medical fields, we've known about coronavirus for 60 years. This is not the first pandemic that we have had because of a coronavirus. This is the third. The first one was SARS in 2000.
Right.
I mean, the people were all concerned about, oh, there will be the change in the millennium, and then the computers will come to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. right, at midnight of the 1st of January of year 2000.
TDK or
Yeah,
2TK.
yeah, Y2K.
Y2K.
That
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is the end of the world because all the computers, machines, and everything will get paralyzed, and that never happened. But the people were so focused on that they ignored that there was a virus that was, again, a mutation that happened in China, and it was carried out to North America by a flight attendant to Canada.
Canada, right.
And then there were some cases, a couple people dead.
In Toronto.
Yes, and then some cases here in the States, a couple people dead here in the States, and that was it. So it practically went unnoticed. The pandemic was serious over there in Asia. That's where China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and all the countries in that Eastern Asia corridor, they had to face the severity of SARS, and then they started circulating in the streets with the face masks,
Right.
and the people were like, "What's going on over there?" Well, they were not aware, but that was the first coronavirus. It was a sudden acute respiratory syndrome. That's why SARS is an acronym, because it's an infectious disease to the respiratory system.
Severe acute respiratory
Correct.
syndrome.
It's
right.
severe because, well, it's so severe that it can kill you,
That's
right? And it's acute, meaning that it happens fast.
Right.
And it's a respiratory syndrome because the system that is affected first and
down.
mostly is the respiratory system. And, well, that SARS killed some people here in America. Nobody paid attention. But for the medical authorities and the people in public health, we were paying attention. And so some systems were developed in Asia to try to mitigate and control the spread of the pandemic at that time. Then we had the second pandemic caused by a coronavirus, that was MERS.
MERS, right.
It was the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. It was another coronavirus. It was happening mostly in Central Asia and the Middle East, and some countries in the southern part of Europe and the Mediterranean, like Egypt, Italy, Greece, Turkey, well, you know, all those countries in the Middle East, and as far as India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran. And it was called the MERS because they were focused on the Middle Eastern. That's where the most of the cases and deaths happened. And of course, it was more lethal than the SARS. And still, if you run the numbers and the comparisons, it was more lethal than current COVID-19. But it didn't spread out that easy.
Right.
I mean, the virus, it was in the same family, but it wasn't that transmissible. At that time, with two pandemics happening due to coronaviruses, some researchers started thinking, oh, this is interesting because that means that coronaviruses can mutate from animals to humans more easily than we initially thought. Okay? And so then there are some conditions that facilitate that. Remember, there is this hypothesis that the HIV virus mutated from the great apes to humans. And same as Ebola, right? And so they started working on options to try to fight the viruses or prevent the impact on humans. And they started developing lab models to control for certain issues. One of the most important issues in coronaviruses is in the inflammatory process that they cause. I mean, yes, it's an inflammatory process that happens in many different levels, many different systems. And, well, inflammatory processes are more dangerous to people that have other conditions because they already have a debilitating system, debilitated body, and they will have, you know, reactions that are not as good as people without inflammatory processes. So that's why COVID-19 took the toll on the people 65 and plus and having underlying conditions like obesity, diabetes, type 2, cancer, or, you know.
A lot of cardiac disease.
Correct, cardiovascular diseases. So that was kind of the first tier of deaths in COVID-19 was people 65 plus with debilitating conditions with comorbidities or diseases that were happening concomitant with the infection. We didn't have vaccines.
Right.
At that time, we started trying to do what we have done as human beings in all pandemics, do quarantines,
Right.
and try to control the spreadness of the virus. And the first thing was to isolate the people and try to keep distance in between the people, because at that time we didn't have anything. We didn't have medications, we didn't have vaccines, we didn't have anything. We only knew that COVID-19 was very transmissible and that was lethal, was killing people. And so also that the population that was impacted the most was the elderly. And that also by getting so many people sick, the hospitals will be overwhelmed. The hospital systems will be overwhelmed. So that was the initial idea. But things unfortunately changed when the debate about the COVID-19 pandemic became politicized. It became a tool in the war of politics. And so then weaponizing the virus. Oh, the virus is a hoax. The virus is not a hoax. This is a hoax. This is not a hoax. Oh, the virus doesn't kill people. The virus kills people. So when we went into that conversation, that created confusion in the population. Because the majority of the people don't have to know what is a virus, what they do, why they kill people. I mean, viruses are just machines of a blob of fat tissue with a genetic material inside. And they don't do anything. They only hack a cell and they put it to replicate, create more viruses. So they can move on and on, reproducing themselves inside the cells until they're controlled by the immune system or they kill you because they destroy you from within. So that's when we started having these precautionary measures. I say, yes, cover your mouth and nose with your face masks. Wash your hands often. Try to stay away from surfaces. Keep distance. And for the most part, in the first times of the pandemic, the measures work. But we didn't have all the resources in hand to go and develop the vaccines because all the drugs and treatments, they have to undergo a certain process that is called the clinical trials. That's what I'm doing right now, the fellowship on how to promote clinical trials on diverse populations. So when we met before coming to this interview, I was just finishing to work my session for that fellowship on clinical trials because I keep studying. Right? It's a process. Lifelong learner is the expression. So then we didn't have the vaccines. Then we had the vaccines, and the vaccines were proven to be, safe, but also unfortunately became part of the political conversation. And then also part of some confusion created before. Because what happens is there was a British epidemiologist in the 80s that he came out with a paper associating vaccines with autism. And well, it was proven that that paper was a hoax. That it was that the data was fabricated, and there were interests in doing so. But unfortunately, that created confusion, and that confusion lasts until today. And so a lot of people assume that it's true that vaccines cause autism and other things.
Anti-vaxxers.
Yes, and then it was developed, that notion. And unfortunately, some people have decided that they are firmly, truly believers of that.
So what would you say to those people if you look them in the camera? That's that camera in the center. What would you say to those people who don't believe that?
Well, I mean, I would just tell them, like, hundreds of millions, billions of people have had vaccines for many different reasons. Like in my case, I just had the flu shot this week, the year flu shot. And I'm a perfect person. I mean, what happened with me and polio got nothing to do with the vaccine, got to do with a logistical issue. But that is exactly the idea when you give a vaccine, that you prevent the occurrence of the disease. So in my case, having the vaccine and not having the vaccine was exactly the same, because the vaccine didn't work. Not because the vaccine was not effective, it's because it wasn't properly kept.
Yeah,
So then I got polio. And then the idea was that a person like me wouldn't have all the problems, limitations, sufferings due to polio because the vaccine worked. And it's the same for everything. Rubella, measles, all the vaccines.
Measles, mumps, yeah.
Tetanus, yellow fever. I mean, we have a bunch of them. And they will not come and create confusion in the immune system. We can say safely that vaccines have been one of the main reasons.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that we have expanded our life expectancy, almost doubled our life expectancy as humans in less than a century.
Right.
Because the people sometimes ignore that the sanitary conditions were very poor until we started the 19th century and the 20th century. And precisely that when we had the Spanish flu, millions of people died because the conditions were devastated. I mean, the infrastructure and the sanitary conditions were devastated after the First World War. The World War I devastated the economies and sent to poverty millions of people around the world. And so people having famines, sanitary infrastructure destroyed. So then the virus came. And we still have that virus circulating. That's why we have an annual flu shot. Still, more than 20,000 people die every year in the States because of the flu. So that's why we kept saying, hey, get your flu shot. And I mean, I cannot promote something if I don't do it myself.
Tell us a little bit. We have about 70% of the teenagers, 12 to 18, not vaccinated in America.
That's one of the problems we have right now.
And about in Mississippi, it's about 48, 49% vaccination rate. Louisiana, Alabama, Texas is in the 40s or early 50s. So why do you think the southern states? I mean, I think New York and Co. it's about 60%, 70%.
Yes. I mean, there are some states that they're above 80%, 70%, 70%, close to 80%. And
so what's the difference between those states, and what's the reason why our teenagers are not getting vaccinated?
Well, there's a combination of things here. I mean, on one hand, it's a generational thing.
Okay.
Right? We have an issue with the Generation Z, right? Is what they call. Some people say they're millennials, but we're beyond millennials right now. We're in Generation Z, and so I see that we have a disconnect in this generation. Sometimes, yes, we were all rebels as teenagers, but when I was a teenager, we didn't have a pandemic that was killing millions of people. I personally had a disease.
Right.
And I believe me, if there was a chance of, like all these movies, like you coming backwards in time, I would say, what will you trade? Right? Will you trade all your degrees and all your experiences and get no polio? I will say yes, because it's so different life when you have a disease than when you don't have it. So I had to experience all this. I still have. Every day of my life, I have to remember that I have polio. And I have to go some sort of pain, right? Because limping creates difficulties. That you have to go with this brace and carry 10 extra pounds. Like I tell the people sometimes, I know how it is to be a Marine. Because I have to carry a lot of extra pounds on my body. Like just for my brace, they're 10 pounds.
Wow.
Now put a backpack. That will be easily another 5 to 10 pounds there.
Right.
So if you know that Marines in training, they carry up to 40, 50 pounds extra weight on them. Well, that's exactly, well,
What
not,
you're
I
doing.
don't have 40, 50 pounds, but halfway.
Close. Yeah.
Close. So then that creates, that need for strengthening yourself. And so, yes, I was a teenager. We all have to experience all that rebel spirit and all that. But we at that time we were not having a pandemic killing millions of
Right.
people in the world. We are at like 700,000 deaths in the United States right now. I mean, not there yet, but close. And we might probably be around 750,000 or 800,000 when we're done with this pandemic. So the reason for having the vaccine is because we are trying to make sense of science into fighting this threat to the society.
So they're trying to rationalize
Correct.
what they should just accept.
Correct. And unfortunately for many people, the decision is not rational, it's emotional. And I think that for that part, there is a combination. It's like a perfect storm of reasons for not having the vaccine. What happens in the South? Yes, there is distrust on doctors. There is distrust on the system, on the government. There is distrust on many things for multiple reasons, and all they're valid. Tuskegee. Hey, black males were not treated for syphilis
Right.
when we had the antibiotics.
Right. In the late 40s.
Correct, and that was done on purpose. They were not given penicillin when they could have been given the penicillin because the doctors in the public health services, the white fellas over there, they wanted to see what happened from
Long-term.
the start until the death. And so there were people dying, and that thing came out. And the same thing happened in Guatemala, remember.
Wow.
And so the Hispanic community is also reluctant to that. And where is that we have the most population of Hispanics and African Americans? Is here in the South.
In the South.
The blacks and the browns are minority here in the South. I mean, taken collectively, right? So then, of course, there will be a lot of resistance, hesitancy. And not just for this vaccine. It's for all the vaccines.
Right.
It's for all the innovations that we have in healthcare. And then there are circumstances that perpetuate that hesitancy. Just like this white fella in Arkansas, given ivermectin to the prisoners in the prison, and the majority of them didn't know what they were receiving. So he was collecting information on treatment of COVID-19 using ivermectin. And the patients didn't know because they were inmates. And you know, the overwhelming majority of inmates population is made by whom?
African Americans.
Blacks and browns, right? Especially African Americans.
Right.
More than 60% of inmates are African Americans, and about 10 to 15% are Hispanic Latinos. So when the blacks and browns come together, we're almost 80% of all the inmates in the United States. So when you come and do that, and this thing is exposed, of course that's a reinforcement for all those circumstances. So we have a combination of factors here. On one end, on the teenagers, I think that there was a more generational part. Also that all this politicization of the issue has created some misunderstandings.
And there's some religious undertone too.
Well, also because
Some people
unfortunately some leaders...
It's the Antichrist that, it's a mark of the beast. Have you heard that?
Yes, and well, when you go through history books, you find that same argument was used in the Middle Ages. That same argument was used in the 19th century. That it was used in World War I. That it was used in World War II. And it's used now.
As a Christian, I know it's not the mark of the beast, because the mark of the beast is 666, and the Bible talks about it on your left or your right hand. and it's going to be a mark that everybody can see. It's not a vaccine.
Correct. And
It's not a
but then there was
vaccine.
this misinformation that the vaccine had a chip, that the vaccine had,
How to control you.
yes,
Right.
kind of mental control, and or that it will change your DNA.
Right.
Well, let me tell you guys, this vaccine is made of RNA.
Right.
I mean, the genetic material has two main, well, there are three main components. One is the DNA, the other DNA is mitochondrial DNA, and the other is the messenger RNA. So RNA is very simple. It's single strain, smaller type of chain of information. It's like an app, let's say. Like you have a cell phone.
Right.
RNA is like one of your apps. It will help you do something, but it's not what is controlling the cell phone.
Right.
That control belongs to the DNA, and that DNA is in the chip of your cell phone, which is the nucleus of the cell. So there's no way that the app will take control over the chip.
Of course.
In this
of course.
case, the only thing that the RNA does in this case for the vaccine is that it will give the immune system the information about how the enemy looks like, so the body can build up a good defense against that enemy and do it fast. That's the other benefit. That's why the vaccine has been so effective, because the vaccine
Recognizes
teaches the body
body.
who is the enemy.
Okay.
And I understand the argument, also the religious argument. I have the utmost respect, for religious. Of course, I'm a person of faith. I believe, but you have also to consider the other things, because one important element is that nobody knows when is the last day.
Nobody, yeah.
That information is only with Big Boss
Yeah.
over there, and he's not going to tell us.
Right.
And that is, if
Privileged
yes, if you read the Apocalypse, the book in the Bible, the last book, is clearly stated that we will not know.
Jesus said it. Only the Father knows.
Yes,
Yeah.
only Big Boss knows.
Knows, right.
That's it. So don't try to double guess or try to, no,
Make it,
exactly, like create conspiracy theories because you're pretending. I mean, if you're trying to know or you're pretending to know, you're playing a dangerous game there, because somebody else did that some time ago, and we know the consequences of that, right? So I just have this.
The guy in Guyana? Okay, I wasn't sure.
and there were others.
Oh, there were
There
quite
were
a few.
others. Yes, I mean in history. That's why I'm saying if you read history books.
I want you to come back and tell us the role of the public health physician like you in combating the COVID pandemic. 700,000 people are thinking, oh, these doctors are failures. They've let us down. Dr. Fauci promised this. Look at Dr. Toby and Dr. Nelson. I want you to tell us how we as physicians can help stamp out this pandemic. We'll see you back in a few minutes. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Amen. All right.